Welcome back, everyone, to the Highland to Hardwater Outdoor Podcast. We are back, everyone. We have a new design. We have a new logo. We have a new look. We have some new interviews coming up. We're very sorry that we've been away for a bit, but we are back, and we have a ton of great conversations coming up soon with some really interesting outdoor enthusiasts and people that have a passion for the outdoors. We are joined by Zach.
Hi, nice to be here with you all.
Yeah. Zach has a lot of passion for the outdoors as well. So I'm going to have him introduce himself a little bit about what he does and how things are going. All right. What's up, Zach?
Hi. Hey, what's up? So my name is Zach Rourke, and I really enjoy spending time outdoors, mostly hiking, a little bit of camping, and most recently fishing. And I'm also an artist and an illustrator, and where that comes into play with my outdoor activities is I'm really inspired by what I'm doing in the outdoors. The scenery around me, fishing, fly fishing, ice fishing, whatever it is I'm doing outdoor really inspires my art. And so that's where I really find, that's where I can really pull together my creativity and my passion for the outdoors.
And I know before we hit play, before we hit record, you were talking about how you are recently into fishing. So
yeah. So
how did that start?
So I just recently started to really get into fishing. As a kid, I went out a couple times with my grandpa and a couple other people, and we would just go out there with a bobber and some worms, and I'm sure a lot of kids have a very similar experience their first time fishing, and I really liked it. And then as I got older, I just never really did it on my own. So if I didn't have someone to take me out, I didn't necessarily go. And then just recently, I went out with my father-in-law a couple times and just completely fell back in love with it. So now I'm going out whenever I get a chance. I'm out at the river, just fishing, mostly smallmouth bass and trout fishing. On a spinning rod and reel, but I'm also just got a fly rod, so I'm starting to get into fly fishing, and we'll see how that goes. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, so I'm really excited because we're hopefully going to be talking to some fly fishermen or some other fishing experts, and a lot of those people are going to be able to help you as well as all of our listeners on some really cool tips in fly fishing and fishing on their own lakes. So that'll be really great when we talk to those people.
Yeah, because I'm really into it, and I'm really just trying to soak up as much as I can because I really enjoy it, but it's all still new to me. So I'm very curious about it all.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we definitely welcome Zach to the podcast. And for this episode, we're actually talking with Brock Butterfield. We talked about converting a bus into an RV and living space, helping others in converting their buses and vehicles, a great story on his experience in living in his bus and finding a safe place to park. And we also talk about his upcoming event that is bringing together the bus life community this June. I know Zach had an opportunity to listen to the podcast before we release it. What did you think?
I really liked it. What I found to be the most inspiring is how Brock was able to take his passion for snowboarding and kind of just build his life and his lifestyle around that. And he took something that already existed, mobile home living, RV living, and he made it his own. So he took this bus instead of just going out and getting an RV because it was too expensive or for whatever reasons, and he made it his own. And he built this whole community around his specific type of living. And I just thought that was really entertaining and cool to listen to. It's a good story.
Awesome. Cool. So enjoy this conversation with Brock Butterfield and keep an eye out for some more episodes of the Highland to Hardwater Outdoor Podcast coming soon. Today we are joined by Brock Butterfield. Brock is a professional snowboarder and creator of Bus Life Adventure. He converted a 4x4 short school bus into a tiny house. He also filmed 6 web episodes called Life in the Bus Lane that was backed by a Kickstarter campaign, also featuring a documentary on converting the bus and living in it full time. Welcome, Brock.
Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
So give us
Cool
a little
to have
bit,
you on here, man.
just to kind of give us a little bit of background. I kind of put that bio together, but if in your own words, kind of give us an idea of who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I had a crazy little run-in with some health problems a while back, and that kind of changed the way that I saw my outlook on life. And so that pushed me into kind of living life to the fullest, and chased a career in professional snowboarding. And while I was doing that, I was never home during the winter months. I'd be gone for 6 months out of the year and paying rent, and never actually there, and sleeping in my truck. So I started to brainstorm on ways where I could save a little bit of money and be comfortable on the road, and started looking into RVs and then maybe sportsmobile vans, and then things were just really expensive, and I had a need for pulling around a snowmobile for a lot of the backcountry snowboarding that we do, a lot of the filming out there. So I had this crazy idea, well, why don't I buy a bus, see if I can find a four-wheel drive bus, and then put a snowmobile deck on the back, convert the inside with a little wood stove, and then hit the road. So that's how it all kind of started, and it's just gradually morphed into more opportunities and more business endeavors than I really ever kind of saw. But it just goes to show that if you kind of follow your dream and just do what you are passionate about, the doors of opportunity tend to present themselves to you.
That's awesome. I remember I had some time to come out there and visit you, Brock, and actually check out the bus. And I got to tell you, Matt, from somebody who, I did the RV thing a little bit growing up with the family and weekend trips and stuff. When I first started to talk to Brock about it, I thought it was a little crazy to live in a school bus. And so I got out there and he showed me around. I got to tell you, it was actually really cool. I could see, how, not only how you did it, but why you did it, and the lifestyle that it enabled you to live. I mean, that's great. And maybe you can kind of speak to a little bit about that growing community of people who are, interested in it. I don't think it seems as crazy to a lot of people as maybe it did a while ago, or I think it's just becoming more common, don't you?
Yeah, it's definitely surprised me. When I first started doing this, there were only a few people online that had done it or had at least made an effort to tell people that they had done it. And so there was very little resources. A lot of it was just learn and trial by error. And luckily, I have a background in construction, growing up with my dad, remodeling homes, building cabinets. And so I knew how to get my way around a measuring tape. I knew how to use a miter saw, the basic, stuff that you would want to know. And I started posting information online because I saw a need for the information to be out there. And so I wanted to kind of create a community and cultivate it within the website, provide tips and advice, and just, stories of being on the road, good places to pull over and sleep without being hassled by the cops. And so that was the initial idea. And with that, I wanted to make a documentary, Life in the Bus Lane. It can be found on YouTube. And so we finished that, we completed it. And then the next thing I know, I'm getting emails and questions from people all over the U.S. on how to convert a bus, or where to find a bus, or how do I get my bus insured. And it was really interesting because I thought that the van life movement was going to completely blow the bus life movement out of the water, and then everybody was going to go the way of a van. They get better fuel economy. They're just a little more incognito if you're going to be trying to camp somewhere in a city for the night and just pull off into a neighborhood. But that hasn't happened. What has happened is the vans are sometimes too expensive to maintain, especially if you're in like a Mercedes Sprinter van. You've got to take it to the Mercedes dealership, or you've got to pay a mechanic an additional surcharge, because they usually have to rent a special tool or tools to work on these vans. So that kind of pushed people into looking closer into buses and realizing that I don't have to buy a full-size bus. I could buy this shorter, bus that's built on a van chassis, the Ford van chassis that we all see, the white ones that the plumbers and families of 12 drive around in. It's built on the same chassis as those, which makes the parts really easy to find. You can go into any AutoZone, Napa, O'Reilly, anywhere and get the parts you need. Any mechanic can work on it. And then it's just a small living space built on top of it. And that's really where I've seen the majority of bus conversions going, is I would say more on the smaller side. And it's like 24-foot in length windows. We usually classify them by how many windows. So like 5 windows long is a good short-sized bus to have for 2 people to live comfortably in. And that's what a lot of younger people are starting to do, is take these buses, convert them on their own, and then hit the road. And the trend I'm kind of seeing is people are living in their bus for a year or 2. They're saving a bunch of money on not paying rent. A lot of these people have remote jobs, software developers, website consultants, consulting of any kind, wedding photography. And they're taking those jobs, making a bunch of money while living in their vehicle, in their bus. And then they come up with this amount of cash that they can then go and actually afford to buy a place. Whereas before, they were kind of stuck in this rent cycle of, okay, rent is, is fairly expensive, but we have to pay it because we don't have enough for a down payment to buy a home. Well, now taking 2 years away from paying rent and just saving the money and living in their bus has now allowed them to actually buy a home. That's what happened to me. I didn't plan that, but it just so happened in my travels, come across a small town and the real estate was very affordable. And I had money set aside. It just made sense.
That's awesome. I got to tell you, Shannon and I were just talking about it. Shannon's my wife, and we just bought our first house, and we're already kind of starting to plan the next phase. You buy the house, but then what do you do after retirement? And both she and I kind of agree that kind of a lifestyle, sounds very attractive for us after retirement. Getting, whether it be an RV or a bus or something like that. Just kind of, saving up some of that retirement money and checking out the country. It sounds like an incredible time.
And Brock, you mentioned that in the beginning when you were going to put together your first bus and converting it, there wasn't really a lot of information out there. Now that you have done it, how many people do you think that you've helped? And then is there more out there now about it now that you've kind of started that?
Yeah, there is definitely a lot more information out there online. And it's pretty fascinating to see the amount of people that actually engage with me through social media, through Bus Life Adventures, Instagram, and through the YouTube channel, the comments in there of, I guess I had an impact on people in 2 ways. The first was showing that you could actually go and convert a bus on your own, regardless of your skill set in construction. You can find a lot of good information on YouTube on basic construction, but now there's a lot of good information, not only from my website, buslifeadventure.com, but there's a handful of other people out there that have put up good blogs as well to help people find information. So it's cool to see people reaching out in that way. And then, the other way they've been reaching out, which I didn't really think about, was the health condition I had. I had ulcerative colitis, which was basically my lower intestine was digesting itself and rotting away. And the only solution for that was to undergo surgery, and they removed my whole large intestine. There's a whole community of people out there that have either gone through the same thing or have ulcerative colitis now. And I've kind of given them inspiration to show that regardless of this health condition that you're dealing with, whether it is ulcerative colitis or whether it's cancer or whatever it is, that you should try to live life as fully as possible regardless of the roadblocks, because you don't really know when you could possibly kick the bucket and be done. So it's been kind of cool. It was something I didn't really think about when I was putting the documentary and the website together, but I would say those are the two most outreach conversation topics that I get from people is, the health issue and just living life, and then just going for it and taking a bus, and regardless if you know anything about it or not, just turning it into a small tiny home and learning through trial and error along the way.
Right. What are some of the other most frequently asked questions that you get with, say somebody in that community reaches out to you and they say, hey, that's awesome. I'm feeling really inspired. What do I do next?
Yeah, I could say
getting started is the hardest part.
Yep, yeah, getting started is the hardest part. And so the number one question I get is, where do I find a bus for sale? And so that is the number one most hit article on the website is where to find a bus. And so I kind of walk through on the different bus auctions, the government auctions, the bus dealers, how to contact your local school district to find them. And then the second question, and this one seems to be getting better. It was how to insure your school bus after you've converted it into an RV. This was quite a problem for a while. We were trying to use the generic companies like Progressive and Allstate and State Farm. And whenever they heard the word converted school bus, they immediately were like, nope, can't do it, won't do it. So it took some time in digging and finding the right companies out there that will actually insure these vehicles. And they require certain things. Photos have to be submitted. You unfortunately can't have a wood stove in the bus. So those are probably the two most asked questions. And then the third runner-up is, where do you park? And, there's a blog that I need to write about that, about all the free parking opportunities in the National Forest Service, the BLM land, rest stops. Everybody always kind of says, oh, yeah, Walmart. And I'll use a Walmart if I have to, if I can't find anything else. But there's much better places than that. And it's a blog I definitely need to sit down and write.
Have you ever parked in a spot and had, I guess one of the questions I would have, kind of following that train of thought, is you park somewhere and it maybe isn't safe, or, have you ever had anything happen where you've parked and been like, man, I'll never park there again?
I actually do have a funny story about that. So my sister and I and our cat, my cat Graham travels around with me as well. He's quite a traveler, but the three of us were on a trip up the Pacific Northwest, and we were in the top part of Oregon. We were up near Astoria, and we were by Cannon Beach. It's a beautiful place to go visit, and we had rolled into town. There's beach access parking, and there's an area that said RV parking. So we pulled in there, plenty of room, parked the bus, went out to the beach, we sat around the campfire, we hung out for the evening, and then we came back, and I didn't see any signs in the parking lot anywhere. We walked around, we looked, nothing that said no overnight camping. And I said, well, this is fantastic. This usually doesn't happen, especially this close to the beach, let alone in a town. So let's go ahead and let's park here for the night. So we go to bed, we draw all the curtains, so all the windows are completely closed for any light being able to go in or out. And that's just basically because I've been in areas where people like to try to peek in the windows at night and see what's going on inside the bus. I think just out of curiosity, but it kind of freaks you out when you're in there sleeping, you wake up to somebody's face, against the window. So yeah. we had all the curtains closed, and it was probably about 3 a.m. I hear this knocking on the vehicle that was next to us. This van had rolled in sometime in the middle of the night, and I could hear a police officer and his partner out there telling the guy, there's no overnight parking here, he has to move. And I'm like, okay, we're next. But I said, if they don't know we're in here, they can't get us to move, and they can't see in here. So I nudged my sister and I said, hey, be real quiet. The cops are going to come knock on the door. If they don't know we're in here, they can't make us move. This is my theory. So we sit there in total silence and try not to move. They're knocking on the door. Graham the cat is like freaking out, going, what the hell is that? He's trying to poke his head out of the curtains, and we're trying to hold him back. And we're just laying real still, not saying anything. They're walking around the whole bus with their flashlights, trying to peek in the windows. They can't see inside. I can hear them outside talking and conversing. And eventually the guy keeps knocking and knocking and knocking on the door. And he goes, if you don't come out, we're going to have to write you a ticket. And I said to my sister, I said, hey, again, if they don't know we're in here, they can't write us a ticket. And so we waited it out, and I can hear them talking outside, and they came to the conclusion. They said, well, obviously, they would have came out if they were in there, because we did threaten them with a ticket. Most likely, they're probably staying with a friend around in the area. This is the only RV parking, so I'm going to guess they probably parked here unknowing that they couldn't park here overnight. So we'll come check on them later in the afternoon tomorrow and see if we can let them know they can't park here overnight. So then they go away, but I couldn't sleep the rest of the night because I was worried they were going to come back. And so it was kind of it was a nice thing that we didn't have to move, but then I wasn't able to sleep the rest of the night. So that was kind of crappy. And we just got up and got out of there the next morning. But yeah, that's about the only crazy story I can think of about parking in a place. Typically, I'm pretty smart about finding a location where I'm not going to run into any sort of problems.
I would have never thought to try and even play it out that way.
Yeah.
If they don't know that I'm in here, they can't do anything.
Yeah,
I would
that's
have
wild.
been like, they can hook it up and tow it out of here with me in it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that would have been interesting to be towed away and then wake up in the impound yard and then try to explain that situation. Right. But luckily, it didn't get to that.
Yeah, you're a real heavy sleeper.
Yeah.
So I know that you mentioned that.
Go ahead, man.
Oh yeah, I know that you mentioned about the culture of bus life in the past, and then now you said that there's more things out there. There's more blog posts. There's more people doing it. So have you noticed then the growing community of people, and is there communication with those? Is there larger groups that communicate? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's funny you bring that up because the community has grown so much that one of the questions I get on occasion from people is, do I know of any festivals or meetups or schoolie hangouts? Schoolie is a term for anybody that's converted a school bus into a home. And right now there's nothing that is really official. There's a couple of Facebook groups of people that will meet up down in the desert. I think it's called Schoolie Palooza, but there's nothing that's like real official put together. And so segue into where we are now, and I am actually in the middle of planning the first event for school buses that have been converted to come and be on display. It'll be like an RV show or a car show, but for converted school buses. And that's also going to entail a lot of art vendors, because typically a lot of people that are living in school buses full-time do some sort of artistic thing, whether it's making jewelry, photography, making soap. And so this is a way for them to actually make a little bit of money on the road by selling some of their art. So I thought, why not have one big meetup of 20 to 25 hand-selected, beautiful school bus conversions to come be on display, and then also allow anybody else that wants to come, whether you're in a van, in a bus, just normal in your car, come and hang out, and you could camp for the weekend. if you're just a normal attendee for the day, just, come in and check out the buses and the art and food vendors, the beer garden, the live music. Because the community has gotten so big that we need to get together to start, sharing more ideas and stories, and to kind of expose this idea of alternative living to the general public, who is maybe in their mind thinking of like Ken Kesey's bus, where if you guys are familiar with that bus, was mostly just rip the seats out, throw some futons in, do a bunch of drugs, and hit the road. So it's beyond that now. There's actually full families, that are homeschooling their kids, people working from the road, doing, like I say, online jobs, consulting jobs. It's a different way of life now. It's a new way to expose your family to the beautiful U.S. that we live in, while still being able to work.
Right. Well, and on so many different levels it hits. I mean, for Matt and I being out in Ohio, a little bit different, but for you guys out there on the West Coast, first of all, a lot of the tech jobs that you have, it allows you to be a little bit more remote. But I think the second and probably more impactful thing is just the cost of real estate out there. And so for you guys to be able to take your job on the road with you, save the money up for the house, because they are quite a bit more expensive out there. I mean, it makes a ton of sense. And I think having a meetup for everybody who's living a similar lifestyle is a phenomenal idea. And, getting people who might be curious to come on out and check it out too. If it's not, for them right now, maybe it's for them in the future.
Exactly. That is definitely a part of my idea for this. We're calling it the bus fair. And I want to be able to let people come and look at these buses that they may be thinking about doing the bus conversion, and get an idea, see the layouts of these buses and go, okay, could I do this? Could I actually live in this small of a space? Or what a lot of people end up doing is go, wow, there's a lot more room in here than I thought there would be.
Right.
So I have a few ideas to invite a couple of people that are in the beginning of their bus conversion and maybe halfway through, so that people can get an idea of that too. See what the bare bones of the bus looks like, the skeleton, before the insulation goes in, before the walls go in. So you kind of have an idea of what your blank canvas is like, and see if you feel like you could do something like that. But I can tell you,
are there any resources?
Go ahead.
Going to say, while you're running it, are there any resources for people in that stage of the conversion to help them floor plan? So, like, maybe you have a 5-window, like you were describing it. Here are different types of setups that you can use. Where are people going to find that kind of basic information?
So again, that is another one that was not out there on the internet. And that was a blog post I did recently with a drafting class in North Carolina. This classroom was actually challenged to design layouts for their family. So some had a family of 5, others had a family of 7, others it was a family of 3. And they were told to take a full-size bus and design a layout that would work most efficiently for everybody. So it was really fun working with those kids on this type of project and giving them some insight. For example, one of the things that they didn't think of when they were doing their floor layout plan were the wheel wells. So everybody had designed the bus and the layout and not remembering that you have wheel wells that are above the floor level that you have to plan around. So every one of the kids had to go back to the drawing board and plan around these wheel wells of the bus. So within that blog, there's a handful of layouts. I did a competition on social media to have people submit their floor plan layouts, and the winners got a little care package from me with a Bus Life Adventure T-shirt and some stickers and things like that. So my hope is that as people build more and more buses, that they'll be able to add to that collection of floor plans to give people an idea of the potential layouts. And then the number one thing I tell everybody is when you're planning your layout, you've sketched it out, a handful of times on paper, but then when you actually get inside the bus, take some masking tape and mask out your cabinets in your bathroom area and your bed, and then stand in there and see if that feels like you have enough room to actually move around in there, or if you've got to readjust and shift a few things. That way it's not permanent. It's not something that you built and then brought inside the bus and then realize, oh man, this is way too tight in here. Now I got to rebuild the cabinet.
That's something I would have never thought about, but you're absolutely right. That's a great idea.
This podcast is presented by Mr. Heater, North America's most popular brand of portable heaters and accessories. Use coupon code podcast20 to receive 20% off and free shipping at www.mrheater.com.
So you were beginning to say there before I cut you off, Brock. So you've got the layout, you've got the community, everyone's coming together. We're going to have some art there. We're going to have food. Where is this all happening? What are the dates?
Yeah, so the bus fair is going to be June 8th and 9th, 2019, and it's going to be located in Oak Ridge, Oregon, which is just outside of Eugene, Oregon, and it's just a little bit further outside of Bend, Oregon. So I have a feeling we're going to draw in a fairly large crowd from both of those cities, a lot of outdoors people, a lot of alternative living people. It kind of goes right along with anybody that's interested in a tiny home. This is another way to look at tiny living, is perhaps you want to have everything all in the same vehicle as opposed to building a tiny home on a trailer and having to pull that around. Again, it's going to be in June. It's beautiful weather out here, typically in Oregon around then. I kind of planned it between Memorial Day and Father's Day to kind of give people something fun to look forward to after Memorial Day, before Father's Day. And then it's going to be at this beautiful park that we have here in Oak Ridge. And Oak Ridge is a funny little town. It's an old logging community. The sawmills completely shut down in the late 80s, and the economy here has been struggling to come back. But we are known for having some of the best mountain bike trails, not only in the U.S., but in the world. And that's where we typically see a lot of traffic in the summertime. So I just figured it's such a great venue to try to bring something else into. And then if people want to bring their bike up at the same time and catch a bike shuttle and go do a loop out on the trail, it's just right there.
Very cool. Where can people go to find out more information and sign up and do all the things that they have to do to take advantage of and get involved?
Yeah, good question. The website is thebusfair.com, and the Instagram account is also thebusfair. Eventually, I'll be creating a Facebook event, which will be called the Bus Fair. So any of those locations, you should be able to find it. It's going to be continually updated as I'm planning it as we're going. Luckily, here we are in August, and I've got a few months ahead of me to get everything dialed in and hopefully have most of it solidified before winter hits, because number one priority in winter is snowboarding, of course. And then when the spring rolls around, everything should fall into place. And hopefully I can get you guys out there. Ohio's a bit of a drive, but you can fly to Eugene for fairly cheap. I'll pick you up.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I find myself out there on the West Coast often enough. I'd love to make it. Sounds like something that we should be present for, right, Matt?
Yep, exactly. And we're definitely going to include all that information in the show notes too, and we'll put that on our podcast Facebook page and Instagram page, so everyone can have links to all that information too.
Very cool. Well, Brock, man, thank you so much for coming on and sharing what you got going on. That's super exciting. Maybe we should have you back for a little bit, not too long before the event, just to kind of bring everyone up to speed on any developments and things going on there.
Yeah, totally. And, it'd be fun to jump back on here again and tell you guys about this other work I've been doing out in the woods, which involves climbing trees and about 60, 70 feet in the air with a chainsaw, sawing off the tops of them to create wildlife habitats for owls and eagles and things like that. But that's a whole nother crazy conversation topic we could have. But, I would love to be back sometime.
Yeah, before we let you go,
Absolutely. We'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, take a moment to give us a list of some of the people that you've worked with, whether that be snowboarding or converting the school bus into the tiny house. What sort of brands have you worked with?
Yeah, I've definitely worked with a lot of different brands, but the ones I'd like to definitely give a thank you to is obviously you guys, Basecamp / Mr. Heater. Then I've gotten a lot of help from both AM Solar and Grape Solar. They're out of Eugene, Oregon as well. Vision X, they make these fantastic LED light bars and lights. It's the same ones NASA use, so if that says anything, if you're thinking about doing a bus conversion and want some good lights, maybe look up the Vision X. And then, of course, Never Summer Snowboards. Love those guys. Handmade in the U.S. in Denver, Colorado. All the materials are outsourced from American companies. So love those guys to death. And then Function Wear and Snow Crew. Those guys have definitely been helping me out for a long time. And I want to give a special shout out to Sean at Vans. Unofficially, I've been sponsored by Vans, but he always makes sure I've got shoes on my feet and boots to keep me warm in the wintertime.
Very cool. Well, we love working with you, Brock. Very excited for all the stuff that you got going on. And we can't wait to follow back up with you and hear how it continues to develop.
Yep.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. And like I say, hopefully I'll see you guys out here soon.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Brock.